Let's cut the crap and look at the American dream for what it's actually become, a high-definition hallucination. We've been fed this populist fairy tale that if you just get the degree, wear the tie, and grind until your joints creak, you'll be rewarded with a white picket fence and a 401k. Well, welcome to 2026, where that fence is probably being sold for scrap metal just to cover the electricity bill. We have people pulling 6-0-hour weeks, actual, educated professionals with fancy framed papers on their walls who are essentially one flat tire away from total financial collapse. They're working like Victorian orphans but with LinkedIn profiles, and yet the math still refuses to math. The biggest joke in this entire circus is the legendary $30 an hour. Once upon a time, earning $30 an hour meant you were the king of the cul-de-sac. Now, it's a hollow wage. By the time the government takes its pound of flesh and your landlord demands a king's ransom for a shoebox with moldy ceilings, that $30 looks more like a coupon for a free breath of air. Earning $60,000 a year used to be the golden ticket. Now, it's just the ticket to watch your bank account hit zero in slow motion every single month. The middle class isn't stable, it's a corpse being weekend at Bernie'd by politicians who haven't seen a grocery receipt since the 90s. These populist pundits love to scream about hard work from their tax-sheltered villas, telling you to just skip the latte, while they ignore the fact that rent has gone orbital. It's an old illusion, a nostalgic fever dream for a world that died a decade ago. We're being gaslit into believing that if we're struggling, it's because we aren't hustling enough. No, Susan, I'm hustling 60 hours a week and I still can't afford a block of cheese and a car payment in the same breath. The system isn't broken. It's working perfectly for the people at the top who think $300 for groceries is reasonable. It's not a lifestyle problem. It's a predatory math problem, and the punchline is that we're the ones paying for the joke. Welcome to the Treadmill Economy, a twisted little carnival game where the floor is rigged and the manager is laughing at you from the VIP lounge. You see, the big wigs in expensive suits love to brag about rising wages. They'll shout from their podiums that your income has doubled or tripled over the last decade, like they're doing you a massive favor. And sure, on paper, you're making more than your parents ever did. But why does it feel like you're drowning in a puddle? Because the speed of the machine has been cranked up to a deadly sprint. You're running faster, sweating more, and burning through your soul just to stay in the exact same spot. It's a literal paradox. Your bank account has more digits, yet your financial security has hit rock bottom. The reality is that your raise was eaten for breakfast by the cost of living before you even saw the direct deposit. It's not just inflation, it's a systematic tilting of the entire gym. While you're pushing for that extra $5 an hour, the price of eggs, gas, and basic survival is leaping ahead by leaps and bounds. This isn't a race, it's a mugging. Your individual effort, all that hustle culture nonsense they shove down your throat, is being completely neutralized by the sheer gravity of a rigged market. You're not failing to get ahead, you're being outrun by a machine designed to keep you panting. And let's talk about this financial gap. We used to call it paycheck to paycheck, but that's far too poetic for the current nightmare. Now, it's a deep, dark abyss. When you fall short by $300 every single month because the cheapest groceries now cost a mortgage payment, that's not a tight month, it's a structural sinkhole. After 6 months, you aren't just stressed, you're buried. It's a cumulative debt trap that turns a stable worker into a modern-day serf. The politicians will tell you the economy is roaring, but the only thing roaring is the sound of the gap widening under your feet while you try to figure out if you should pay the electric bill or eat something that didn't come out of a cardboard box. It's an absolute circus, and we're the ones cleaning up the elephant dung. To even step onto the playing field today, you have to pay a existence tax that would make a medieval feudal lord blush. We've moved past the era where a car, a smartphone, or high-speed internet were luxury items for the tech-savvy elite. No, in this glorious modern dystopia, they are the mandatory price of admission. Try getting a job without a data plan or showing up to a shift in a city with zero public transit, without a car that costs half your soul in insurance and repairs. You aren't buying gadgets. You're paying for the privilege of being exploited. The system has effectively made it illegal to be poor by turning every basic tool of survival into a subscription service you can't afford to cancel but can't afford to keep. And then there's the gatekeeper of the shoebox, the modern landlord. These people have the audacity to demand you earn 3 times the rent just to qualify for a 1-bedroom apartment that smells like damp despair and broken promises. If the rent is $3,000, you need to be pulling in $9,000 a month. Who are these mythical creatures earning nearly six figures just to be allowed to live in a basic apartment? Certainly not the people actually keeping society running. It's a velvet rope at the front door of survival, and if you don't meet the height requirement of the income ride, you're relegated to your backseat or a tent, while politicians tweet about housing initiatives from their third vacation homes. The real killer, though, isn't one big bill, it's the stacking effect. It's the way insurance premiums hike 15% because a cloud looked at a CEO the wrong way, followed by convenience fees, property taxes, and grocery bills that look like phone numbers. These costs don't just add up, they dogpile on you until you're pinned to the floor. It's a wave of micro-extortions. You're not just paying for bread, you're paying for the corporate jet of the guy who owns the bread factory. It's a relentless, suffocating tide of unexpected expenses that are actually perfectly predictable features of a system designed to keep your head just an inch below the waterline. It's not a lifestyle, it's a hostage situation with better branding. If you thought the educated elite were safe in their ivory towers, think again. The towers are made of cardboard and it's starting to rain. We're witnessing the absolute demolition of the fortress families, those white-collar folks who did everything right. They've got the degrees, the titles, and the sensible shoes, yet they're being crushed by the unholy trinity of modern debt. The mortgage, the student loans, and the ruinous cost of childcare. It's like trying to keep a boat afloat while three different giant squids are pulling you into the abyss. You've got parents earning doctor money, who are essentially just glorified bag holders for the banks. They aren't building a legacy, they're just managing a sophisticated cash transfer service from their employer's payroll directly to a Sally Mae offshore account. The very definition of middle class has been surgically altered without anesthesia. It used to mean having a rainy day fund and maybe a boat you didn't need. Now, the new middle class is just a high-income survivalist group. You're stable only in the sense that you haven't collapsed yet. There is no breathing room, no margin for error, and certainly no disposable income, unless by disposable you mean throwing your money into a furnace to keep the lights on. It's a life lived in a state of permanent financial breath-holding. You look successful on Instagram, but your bank account is a graveyard of insufficient fund warnings and quiet desperation. The most terrifying part of this comedy of errors is the breaking point. In this rigged game, success is so fragile that a single sneezing fit could bankrupt you. One surprise root canal, a transmission that decides to quit life, or a kid needing braces, and suddenly that stable professional is sliding down the grease pole toward the bottom of the system. We've built a society where people with master's degrees are one medical bill away from living in a van down by the river. It's peak dark humor. The system demands you spend 40 years being responsible, just so a single piece of bad luck can delete your entire existence. The fortress isn't protecting you. It's just a fancy cage where you wait for the inevitable clunk under the hood to end your middle-class cosplay once and for all. Let's talk about the great American gaslight, the work hard, get stable formula that's been shoved down our throats since we were in diapers. The plan was simple. Get the degree, grind like a caffeinated squirrel, and you'll be rewarded with a life that doesn't involve checking your banking app before buying a gallon of milk. But that formula is now as obsolete as a floppy disk. In 2026, the game has been fundamentally recoded, and nobody bothered to send you the patch notes. We are playing a rigged version of Monopoly, where the landlords already own the whole board before you even roll the dice. The old path to stability hasn't just been blocked, it's been demolished and replaced by a luxury toll road you can't afford to drive on. The most insulting part of this shift is how the system now treats human labor like a used tissue. We've entered the era of asset supremacy. If you own a portfolio of stocks or a bunch of rental properties that you probably inherited from a great uncle who worked 3 hours a week in 1964, you're winning. But if you actually do things, if you build, teach, heal, or move the world with your hands, you're basically a sucker. The rules of the game are now aggressively tilted toward capital and away from sweat. While you're stressing over a 3% raise that doesn't even cover the hike in your Netflix subscription, the guy who manages assets is making more in his sleep than you make in a year of overtime. It's a parasitic feedback loop where money breeds money, and labor just breeds exhaustion. And here's the brutal truth that those populist blowhards on TV won't admit. Working hard is no longer a guarantee of anything. It's just the bare minimum requirement to stay in the race. You're not hustling to get ahead. You're hustling to keep from falling off the back of the truck. The golden ticket to prosperity has been replaced by a survival pass. They've turned your ambition into a weapon against you, convincing you that if you just work an 8-0-hour week, maybe you'll finally be worthy of a life without debt. Spoiler alert, they're lying. You aren't failing the system. The system is successfully extracting every drop of your value while telling you it's your fault for not being innovative enough. It's not a meritocracy anymore. It's an endurance test where the finish line keeps moving 10 miles every time you get close. So, what do we do when the greatest economy in history feels like a slow-motion mugging? People are finally waking up and realizing that the only way to win this rigged game is to stop playing by their rules. We're seeing a massive urban exodus, a polite way of saying people are fleeing cities like they're escaping a burning building. These metro hubs used to be magnets for opportunity. Now they're just collection centers for overpriced avocados and $4,000 studio apartments that come with a complimentary view of a dumpster. People are packing up their degrees and moving to the middle of nowhere, not for the fresh air, but because they're tired of working 3 jobs just to pay for the privilege of being stuck in traffic. Then you've got the off-grid Avengers. There's a growing trend of people trying to disconnect from the commercial IV drip. They're growing their own tomatoes, installing solar panels, and learning to fix their own stuff because they've realized that every time they interact with a service provider, they get fleeced. It's survivalism for the suburbanite. When the system becomes a vampire, the only logical move is to stop being a blood donor. And for the really bold, they're just leaving the country entirely. Imagine that the American dream is now being exported to Portugal or Southeast Asia because you can actually afford to see a doctor there without selling a kidney. It's a hilarious irony. We used to be the destination for the world's ambitious. Now we're the place people leave so they can finally afford to retire before they're 95. Here's the cold, hard truth that the populist puppets in Washington hate. It's not your fault. You've been gaslit for decades into thinking your financial struggle is a personal failing or a lack of grit. Absolute garbage. You could work 100 hours a week and skip every latte for a century, and you still wouldn't outrun a system designed to siphon your wealth upward. Admitting that the system is a dumpster fire isn't giving up, it's the first step towards sanity. Stop beating yourself up for not being able to afford a lifestyle that was mathematically deleted before you even graduated. You aren't a failure. You're just a player in a game where the dealer has 5 aces. Recognizing the scam is the only way to start finding a real way out. The truth is, you've been carrying a weight that was never yours to bear. For years, you've looked in the mirror and wondered why your best wasn't good enough. Why the harder you ran, the further the horizon seemed to drift. But look around. This isn't just your struggle. It's a silent, collective heartbeat, shared by millions who did everything right in a world that started playing by wrong rules. We are living in a time where the American dream has been replaced by a quiet, desperate endurance, where stability feels like a ghost we keep chasing but can never quite touch. It's time to stop apologizing for a system that failed you. It's time to breathe and realize that your worth isn't defined by a bank balance that refuses to grow despite your sacrifice. We aren't just numbers in an economic report. We are human beings who deserve more than just the permission to exist. As you close this video, remember, the light at the end of the tunnel isn't a train. It's the realization that you're not the one who's broken. If this story felt like your own, speak your truth in the comments. Let's make the invisible visible. Stay with us, and let's keep uncovering the reality together. See you in the next one.